In this episode of Stars, Cars, Guitars, we welcome the voice of the Hollies, the one and only Allan Clarke, who talks about his rock and roll heroes and friends.
I remember going down into the number 2 studio and Mac, who was on the piano, and he was doing, you say hello and I say goodbye.
He opens up about his relationship with fellow Holly, Graham Nash.
To lose your main guy, friendship-wise, it was a blow.
And I take him back through some of his biggest hits and finest wardrobe moments.
My head is not full of what I did. It carries on each day at a time. And sometimes people ring me up and say, will you do Stars, Guitars and whatever you, and it's you. So of course I do. So this is the highlight of this day.
Stars, Cars, Guitars.
Welcome to another outing of Stars, Cars, Guitars. We've been trying to nail this guy down for ages. I'm such a fan. I really am. I'm thrilled to say welcome, Allan Clarke.
Glad to be here after such a long time.
There's lots of things I want to talk about, but there's one thing that really, I'm just itching to talk to you about, and that is that look.
What look?
The look.
I don't know what you mean by the look, to be quite honest.
The look that was so rock and roll, the look that I love. Elvis had the jumpsuit, and then in the early 70s, you had that bare chest thing going on, which I could kind of live with or live without, but what I would call Native American leather jackets with a scuff. Where did you get those jackets from?
Okay, well, you can blame that probably on Long Cool Woman, really. Yeah. Because, see, I was going to America and I was visiting Los Angeles, and there was a place there called North Beach Leathers, and being into sort of Indian folklore, and once being Clint Eastwood, I went and visited the shop, and all the regalia there was absolutely fabulous. And I bought 2 outfits of North Beach leather suits with rhinestones and things like that, being that sort of macho sort of type Indian cowboy guy, and it carried on from there, you know. So I didn't do that look purposely. It was just that was the way that I liked dressing. Actually, at that particular time, my sons were going to school in Hampstead, and my son did actually say to his mother once, "Please don't let Dad pick me up dressed up as an Indian anymore, please." So, you know, that was okay. That's what it was like in those days.
No, honestly, Allan, I love that look. I was watching some videos, and it was Long Cool Woman. And then you did it on Midnight Special a few years later, and you had a very similar kind of look. And I've been watching the stuff on YouTube, and it seemed to me that look lasted you, did you pretty well for 2 or 3 years. So look, I know we hardly know each other, but what size chest were you back in those days?
I think I was about 36.
Damn.
Now, I've still got the clothes. They don't fit anymore, you know. So.
But you still got them. Not
that I'm a hoarder of any regalia or anything like that, but the 2 suits that I got from North are really special for me. It was a special time when I was in Los Angeles doing that. So that actually my eldest son, it doesn't fit him now. It probably fits now. Sam, my grandson, who's 27, it fits him now. So it's been passed down.
It was just such a great look. And to me, as cool as Elvis in the white jumpsuits in Vegas, you with that kind of look going on, you know, sometimes when bands move out of their decade, it can be a bit of an awkward transition with fashion and music, but you pulled it off beautifully.
Well, I think I went sort of in between. You know, I didn't want to be a part of the old past, and I didn't really want to be a part of the new past. So then going forward that way, you know, like in the what do they call it, the new wave thing, which was a bit weird to me. So I went about halfway. I always sort of wanted to go in for sort of nice jacket suits and things like that, but didn't get into the makeup. No. Not the makeup.
Roy Wood went a step too far probably for you with Wizard, with all of the hair, the beard and the makeup. But when you look back, sometimes when I look at the Beatles, they never look cooler than they did on the cover of Rubber Soul, when they had the the black high neck turtleneck tops and the suede jackets. For me, you never looked more rock and roll than Long Cool Woman.
Well, rock and roll is my music. I fell in love with rock and roll when I first heard it. It being Elvis right at the beginning. There was a guy called Jack Jackson who had his own show on TV, and it's called Cool for Cats. And I used to listen to it on the radio, and it was on television as well. And I remember him saying that there's this really, really great song about this really new guy that's come along called Elvis Presley. And actually, there's no video for it, but the music itself and the lyrics will carry it. So we're gonna show that. And I fell in love with that Elvis Presley sound at that particular time. But the guys that came along, were there at the same time as Elvis, but they sort of came into their peak with, Eddie Cochran, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis. I mean, I could just go on and on. I mean, those guys, they live in my head most of the time now. I love that music. So I suppose that doing Long Cool Woman was something that I remembered from a long, long time ago that helped me write that song with Roger Cook.
It still sounds great. I played it on the radio the other day, and it's got one of the best intros of all time. And it's a great intro for a DJ because there's lots of little staccato points to hit, and it just builds beauty. It's a great song. When you look back at Elvis and Little Richard, I mean, Little Richard is still loud now, all these years later.
Well, yeah, he always was loud. But, I remember doing a show with him in New York in about 1966. And Jimi Hendrix was playing guitar for him at that particular time. And it was a place called Paramount, and we were doing 9 shows a day. We only did 2 numbers, crazy, but, we loved it because we were doing it with Little Richard. And he was like screaming that he was the king of rock and roll and all that sort of thing. And he got thrown off the show, which to me was, he wasn't to blame because he is the king of rock and roll. But at that particular time, he was a bit unruly. But that's the only time I ever saw him or ever met him. And I just wish that I would have been able to see him at other shows, but I never did.
Oh, yeah, but at least you met the guy and saw him, Allan. Now, what about Elvis? Because in the 1960s, there you were with big, big hits in America. Did you get to one of those Vegas shows?
The year I got to one of the Vegas shows was 1976. No, yeah, I think it was either 76 or 77. And I was with my wife. I was recording an album in Los Angeles. And I met Elvis's drummer. And he said, well, why don't you come down to LA and see the show? And I said, well, how do I get tickets for that? He said, don't worry about it. We'll set it all up for you. The guy at the studio got tickets for me as well. And for 2, I asked for another one for a friend. And we drove down to Los Angeles to Caesar's Palace and booked ourselves in. And the tickets that we got were VIP tickets. And it's quite a funny story, this, because we got to Caesar's Palace and there was this huge queue at the door for Elvis. So we went to the front of the queue and I said, 2 tickets. And he said, yes, would you join the queue? And I said, well, these are from Jerry Weintraub. These are like VIP tickets. He says, yes, I know. Stand in the queue. So I thought, this is really, I'll try again. So I said, no, did you see these are VIP tickets? He said, yes, stand in the VIP queue. And the queue was for VIPs. So I thought, okay, everybody wants to see Elvis that night. And we got in and we thought being at the back of the queue that we'd be right at the back of this, this small theater. We got front seats right at the front. And Elvis came on about an hour and a half later, which was an hour and a half too late because he should have been on an hour and a half before that. And he walked on backwards and he was overweight, but he had his white jumpsuit on. But as soon as he opened his mouth, you closed your eyes, it was Elvis Presley. And I was just loving it. And when he comes to the stage and gives the things, and he was doing that in front of me, doing that, and he put his hands out. So I thought, I gotta have that. So I felt like that, and all of a sudden there was a tug from my jacket, and it was my wife pulling me back. And she says, don't be silly, Allan. Leave it for the So I didn't get it. But anyway, you know, we ended up in the coffee bar later on, and then I saw his drummer there, and I said, any chance of going up and seeing Elvis? He says, no. He says, you should have your memories. You don't want to see him. So I did that. Really, you know, he wasn't in his shape to sort of have friends up there. So, you know, I did actually see Elvis Presley live, and I think that was about 2 years before he died. You know, he did all his hit songs, and that was good enough for me. I closed my eyes now. I was back in the 1950s. Brilliant.
There must have been a moment when you think, I'm Allan Clarke, this kid from Manchester. I've had all of these hits. I'm a pop star. And now I'm watching Elvis Presley in the front row.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, a lot of that has happened to me, or did starting happen to me when, you know, when I actually joined the group and we had a hit. I've always felt myself as being a very, very lucky guy, being in the position that I was in then, and even in the position that I am now. And you know, I've never taken this lightly, becoming as famous as I have, or hope that I still am, being around for such a long time. But yeah, I was very, very lucky being able to do what I did, and I met most of the guys that I loved from the 50s, especially the Abbey brothers. You know, even recorded with the Abbey brothers. Actually, recorded the Abbey brothers. We got a call from the Palladium one night, and it was Don Everly, and he was asking us to go to their hotel if they had any songs to play them that they wanted to record. And of course, Graham and I and Tony thought, wow, we're going to meet Don and Ed, you know, Don Everly's. And when we got there, they opened the door, and the two black guitars, you know, were just standing against the bed. And I thought, oh dear, well, I want to play one. We didn't, but you know, I was quite speechless when I went in there, because I was in awe of these two guys. You know, because Graham and I had grown up singing their songs as Ricky and Dane Young in the old days, because we wanted to be that close to the Everly brothers. That's why we chose that name. But we sat down and we played songs to them, and they picked about seven or eight songs. And we thought, well, that's good. And then they asked us to be in the studio with them to help them record the songs. And it became an album called Two Yanks in England, which, you know, being there, doing that with them and the other guys. I think Elton John was there as Ray Strike on one of the tracks. I'm not too sure. And we, you know, I remember the day I was in the actual vocal booth with Don. And we were doing one of the songs, and it got to a line where he stopped it, and he turned to me and he said, "How do you sing that again, Al?"
Wow.
Now, can you imagine that? You know, here's the guy that you adore, and you think that you belong to the world, you know, oh, wow. And he turns around and he says, "How do you sing that again, Al?" Oh, you know, you know, you have memories like that, and you meet people. I met people through the years, you know, that I've had to talk to, not had to, wanted to talk to, but been afraid to go up and sort of make my, you know, even though I was who I was, I never felt that I was that important to be able to interrupt somebody in my name's Allan Clarke, you know, can I speak to you? Most of the time, they actually came to me and says, hey, like your stuff, and got into sort of conversations like that. Some of the times were good, some of the times they were a bit surprising. Jerry Lee Lewis was a bit of a surprise. I was only in the dressing room for about 15 minutes, and my son asked me if he could leave because he got frightened. So, you know, all these things happen. Yeah.
So how old was your son when he was frightened by the killer, Jerry Lee Lewis?
I think he was in his 20s. Yeah. He was in his, yeah.
What was he frightened of, Alan?
No, he was a bit of a wild man, old Jerry. Had the excitement running through his veins, and he took towel up and he started flicking the towel, you know, at us and things like that, and it sort of surprised my son. And at that particular night, I don't know for what reason he ever said this, and I still don't understand it. But when he first saw me and looked at me, he said, "Holy moly, Elvis reborn!" And I thought, what's he talking about? Because at that particular time, he thought I was Elvis. I thought, what a strange thing to say. But that was my meeting with Jerry Lee Lewis. but I forget all those sort of things when I put his records on virtually every day.
This is Stars, Cars, Guitars. It's Alex Dyke with Allan Clarke from the Hollies. Don't forget, it's really, really important to us that you subscribe to our channel if you like what we're doing. You follow us and you leave comments underneath. We love reading your comments. Allan, let's go back to the fairly early days when you guys had taken Manchester by storm, and then you go over to the Cavern and play there. Were you welcomed by the Liverpool gang, or did they say, get out of town, we got the Beatles?
No, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. There was always that thing about Liverpool and the Liverpool groups and the Manchester groups, and everybody always thought, not that I think it was true for the Hollies, that there was competition between the groups from Liverpool to Manchester, and I can quite understand that. But, the first time that we went to the Cavern, we were quite surprised at how small it was and how dangerous it was. There was only one way in and one way out, and that was on a flight of stairs, which was very steep, and it was all very wet and sweaty and things like that. But we'd heard, to play the Cavern was the place to be. So it was very early on in our career. We went on great. The crowd was fabulous, and and they welcomed us back anytime we wanted to be there. So any competition between us and the Beatles or anybody else that played the Cavern was non-existent for us, and we were just taken there, and they just loved us, And I remember going down, seeing the big three and seeing Jerry Marsden down there, and everybody was friendly to each other. There was no fights or anything like that. Fabulous place to play.
And what was it like years later when you're at Abbey Road and you're using the famous Studio 2 that the Beatles were using? Were there times when you were recording there at the same time as them and you'd be sharing tea in a polystyrene cup?
Sure. Well, EMI Recording Studio was called in the day, early on. But, we were there for many years. We used to pass the Beatles, going in and out. And there has been the occasion where, on a couple of times. I mean, Paul came up one day and just asked me to go into the studio and sing on one of his tracks, which I did with Linda. Never got paid. No, I did get paid for it, actually. What happened was everybody that was on the album, Back to the Egg, he actually sent his shop around with a bag with a gold bracelet, which said Back to the Egg, which, would you believe, I lost?
Oh,
I lost it. No, I lost it. That's one of my regrets. But there you go. But we were very helpful with each other. I mean, I remember going down into the number 2 studio, and Mac, who was on the piano, and he was doing, you say hello, and I say goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm writing a song. I said, what's it called? It's called You Say Hello and I Say Goodbye. I said, you finished the lyrics yet? He says, no, that's it. And I thought, that's it. Just that. You say hello and I say goodbye. He says, yeah. And I thought to myself, best of luck with that, mate. And it turned out to be like I'm the hit. Hearing him just doing the lyrics on that, repeating that over and over again, I thought, what is he doing? But we all know the guy's a genius anyway, don't we?
Now, you and Graham were primary school friends together, and you were very, very thick, and your harmonies were well known around the world on all of those massive hit singles. And then, to cut a very long story short, you go to the West Coast, all this hippie thing's happening. You're both buying into it, but it seemed he went in a lot deeper than you. He leaves the band. Was that like a divorce? Were you really, really pissed off with him?
Well, I'd be lying if I said no. I think I wasn't, as you say, pissed off. I was very disappointed and I suppose devastated that someone who I'd known as my friend virtually all my life could actually leave a band that we brought up and sang in, and the two of us not actually meant for that to be. It happened with a lot of people as well as happening with us. But then to sort of lose your main guy, friendship wise, it was a blow. But you know, when he did leave, I was married. I had a child. I had a house. I had a mortgage, but I was still the lead singer of the Hollies. And what I thought I had to do was to get someone just like Graham. So Terry Sylvester came along, and we thought, we wonder what's going to happen. We brought a song out called Sorry Suzanne, and it made #2. So that more or less sort of softened the blow slightly, you know, because one of those things that, you know, people always think if someone leads a group, that's the end of the group. But I always think you can never replace a lead singer.
No, and as far as the Hollies are concerned, you're definitely right with you, because I saw the Hollies a few times, and when you left the group, no disrespect to the band, I wasn't interested in seeing the Hollies without you. But I wonder when, because you guys turned down Marrakesh Express, which is a great track.
No, we didn't turn it down. We didn't turn it down. We tried to do it, but it didn't work out the way that I think Graham wanted it. So it wasn't us turning it down. It just, at that particular time, wasn't the right record. So I think we do. I think we do have a recording of that somewhere. But you know, at that particular time, Graham was writing all his own songs because he wanted to go. He wanted to go out as him writing it, and he was more or less singing all of the harmonies over the lead vocal. And I think he started with Butterfly, where he was singing. When he wrote the song, he wanted to do it all. So I think the journey started there with that. He wanted to be known as a solo artist as well as being with the Hollies, and I think that he got fed up of having hits after hits after hit after hit. For some reason, I don't know why. He just wanted to broaden his horizons, and I think that started with King Midas. He was disappointed with nobody liking what was at that particular time his baby.
I never liked that track. I never liked King Midas in Reverse. I thought it was ridiculous. It wasn't. You think, what's this about? Just give me the hits.
It was overproduced. You know, Johnny Scott, great. You know, he's a great guy, great. You know, arranger and things like that. But there was just too much on the song. You know, and you know, there was only one group that could do that right at the beginning. And I think they were the people to sort of start being having the imagination of what sounds they could put on the recordings. And you knew who I'm talking about. It's the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's, and all that sort of thing. And I think that at that particular time, Graham had tried to sort of emulate, maybe to get into that standard. And you know, I mean, the Hollies, great band, great song, great hits. I was quite contented about it going on like that, because that's what we did. That's what we were good at. You mustn't forget that when Graham did leave, and after Sorry Suzanne, we brought out a song which was called He and Heavy. We'd had an orchestra on it, had Reg Dwight playing piano, and it was something that nobody ever thought the Hollies would do, would be a song like He and Heavy Is My Brother. And look where that took us.
Well, I want to get to that, and I'm going to get to me, the three really big songs, He Ain't Heavy, and Air That I Breathe, and Long Cool Woman. Now, they are my three favourite Hollies tracks. Don't get me wrong, I love Bus Stop, I love On a Carousel, and I'm a fan of Graham, but you are one of the most honest people in the business. So I'm just asking you this, because these are the kind of things I wonder about. He leaves the band, you're hacked off, you're in the top 10, you're in the top 5 with Sorry Suzanne, then you hear Marrakesh Express, and you know it's a monster track in America, and now he's a big album artist, Crosby, Stills and Nash. Are you jealous? Are you jealous?
No, jealousy is not one of my things. He deserved it. He worked hard at it in more ways than one. But I do remember the day that I sat with Stephen Stills and David Crosby and Graham in a hotel in Los Angeles when we'd just come back from the club where we played that night, and they were all like strumming guitars and things like that, and I just got tired of it and just went to bed, and they carried on. And I think that was the friendship between the three of them brought the idea of what they could do together. And then I think there was a few more people that got involved with that to make that happen. I think Mama Cass was one of those people. And it took a few years for that to sort of to happen, and it did happen in late 1968.
It's funny you say that. Cynthia Lennon told a story about when the Beatles went off to Wales to, do all that kind of stuff they did, all the chanting and all the kind of hippie stuff they did. And she missed the train, and she saw John get on the train, and she couldn't get through the barrier. They didn't realise that this is probably just before Brian Epstein died, and she couldn't get through the barrier, and she saw the train go off, and she said, from that moment on, I kind of knew I'd lost him. And it sounds to me like you had, in that hotel room on that night, that was that pivotal moment for you when Graham had jumped camps.
Yeah, well, I suppose so. But it's a decision that he knew within his own heart that I can understand it now, the way that he felt, that there was somewhere he wanted to go, but was being stopped because of maybe he felt guilty doing it because of his friendship with me, or what might happen. But I think the pull was too strong. The West Coast was a beacon for him. He was saying, come over here, and he was much more into that sort of lifestyle than any of the rest of us were, the boys. I mean, we're just normal guys. Graham went over to America, and he started living the LA style. And of course, he met Joni Mitchell. Well, he met Joni before he left the band, so that wasn't a new relationship. I think she was introduced to Graham by David Crosby. I'm quite sure of that, actually. He was in Canada. So that was another person in his life that pivoted the idea of him doing more stuff with these people. And, and those people were brilliant at what they did. I mean, Joni Mitchell, there's no one better than her, female. The stuff she writes and the kind of, the way she plays guitar. And Crosby, coming from Birds, I loved all that stuff. And I loved all the stuff that Graham did after that. But I always had that not really wanting to hear it, but knew it was great. Yeah. I mean? Like three voices together, it's just something incredible.
You're very honest, and I just can imagine the album coming out. And you kind of, if I play this and I like it, it's going to give me some kind of anxiety. But then you record "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother," and what did Graham Nash think to that?
Well, he was very surprised, as you said in a DVD we made many years ago, that he was quite surprised. He actually used the F word by saying, "How dare they get two number ones after I left," which I thought was a very nice thing of him to say. He was quite humble in saying that, actually acknowledging that we didn't need him in a way. But I've seen Graham since. I mean, I speak to him once a week, and we're great friends. The friendship never really ended. It was just the sort of distancing of, why did you do it? I know why you did it, but I don't want you to tell me why you did it, that sort of thing. I didn't really want to have a discussion with him about it. But just recently, we've come together in a better way, and things look good. But Graham's Graham.
Yeah, Allan, could you have done? Is there a part of you now that wishes you had done the LA lifestyle, moved your family over there, given it 2 or 3 years in the early 70s in America? Have you got regrets there?
I tried it once, 1977, I think it was, pretty sure. I'd been recording in LA. I had a manager over there and a producer who were very excited about getting me over there to tour, which frightened me to death, really, because I'd never been and done anything like that on my own before. Which, when I look back at, I thought, well, being that scared, all I had to do was go over there and have a band around me and sing some songs off my album, and then sing "Here, Heavy Is My Brother," and "The Air That I Breathe," "A Long Cool Woman," and that'd be it. I'd be made, But that didn't enter my mind at that particular time. And I thought that if I'm going to go out there as a solo artist, then I have to do everything other than stuff from the Hollies, not do any Hollies stuff and just be me. So what I decided to do was I'd take my family over there, and I had a house in Beverly Hills, And when I did actually get there with my kids, Toby, Sam, and Piper, and Jenny, my wife, because they'd never been to anywhere like that before, and the house was great in Beverly Hills. It was wonderful. Suddenly the tour wasn't going forward. So there was me and the family in a house in Beverly Hills for 3 months, with nothing to do other to go out and see what we could do. I remember meeting an interviewer in a restaurant who asked me about my career, and she asked me these questions about which parties was I going to go to, which people are you going to be interviewed by, who are you palling out with, is there anybody in your life other than this? And of course my answers to that were quite honestly no, you know. And she said, well, you're never going to make it in Hollywood. And I thought, oh well, okay. But not that would bother me in any way whether I made it or not. I was quite happy with who I was and what I was doing anyway. And for living there for 3 months, Hollywood and Las Vegas people in show business are crazy. They're all crazy. And they, you know, socially, you know, when you go into a restaurant and you sat there, the people that you're eating with, that you've met there to have a meal with, are always looking at the door to see who's coming in, you know? And that those sort of things wouldn't sort of make me want to live in a place where people act and live like that. It's just crazy town. And I've never wanted to live like that. I'm glad that I never did.
And you see, the thing is, you happily married, very content being a dad. Kind of, you had the best of both worlds, because you know you had a beautiful family around you. You were very, very grounded, and then you put on the North Beach leather at night and sang "Long Cool Woman" and became a rock star.
Well, it came out of nowhere, didn't it? You know, I mean, when I met Roger, you know, we'd written a couple of songs together, and he said, I've got this idea of a rock and roll song. Will you come in and help me? And so we did. It was in Park Lane. They had an office there, Air Studios, and we went down in the basement with a bottle of whiskey. Because if you're going to do rock and roll, you know, you got no bottle of brandy that's right. And I took my guitar down there, and I think Roger had his ukulele, because he used to write all his songs on the ukulele. I thought, that's not rock and roll. And within half an hour to 45 minutes, we'd written "Long Cool Woman." And at that particular time, I hadn't done the intro or anything like that. I hadn't thought of what it was going to be like. To me, it was just rock and roll. It was Chuck Berry playing the guitar. So I tried to be Chuck Berry doing his chunky 3-chord sequence, you know, on the bottom notes. And so I thought, well, yeah, this is quite a good song. Took it into the studio to the boys. Ron Richard, our producer, wasn't there at that particular time. He wasn't well. So I played him the song, and I said, I've got a riff at the beginning of it, which I've just done. I don't know where it came from, but, you know, it's just a riff. Not that I'm a riff player in any way. And Tony said to me, well, you play the guitar. If you know it, you play it. So there was me, there was Bernie Calvert, bass player, and Bobby. And the three of us did the backing track with the intro. Then I doubled the intro. Then Tony put an overlay of chords on top of what I was playing. Then I did the vocal. I did it in 2 takes. And the guy in the engineer who was like putting the song together, who should have got the production as far as I was concerned, put some slap echo on it, and we mixed it there and then. And he said, right, that's going on the album. And that's how quick it was. And that's how I think that when something is so relaxed and you're not doing anything that you meaningful, and you're enjoying what you're doing and not caring about how it sounds but how it feels, then a song takes a resonance of its own. And without that slap echo, and maybe without me not playing that guitar riff, the song would never have made it.
It came just at the right time for the Hollies. None of those famous harmonies. It was a different sound, but it wasn't too far away from the sound you wanted. The record scrapes into the top 30 in Britain. You must have been real. I mean, I know obviously it went to number 2 in America, which was like a lottery win for you just at the right time. And there's an interesting story about you not being in the band when it hits America. But when it only got to number 29 or whatever it was in the UK, did you think, come on, guys, this is one of the best things we ever done.
Well, I wasn't in control. So, you know, I couldn't go out and do any promotion with it. And they had Michael Rickford, who was the lead singer, who was never going to sing that song in a million years, you know. I mean, Terry had a go at it, but, you know, what can you do? If you're not in control, you're not the lead singer of a song that's a hit in England, and you're not allowed to do it, then it's game over.
Right, let's explain that for our viewers. So Allan's in the Hollies, and then Graham leaves, and then Allan says, to cut another long Hollies story short, I want to do my own solo album. The guys in the band, the guys are a bit hacked off, and they say, well, look, you either stay with us or you leave. So you do this, you want to do this solo album, so you effectively get kicked out of your own band when you're the main man.
True. You know, I thought, well, I've got to do this. If I don't do what I'm doing, I want to do, because I had the songs, you know, which I thought was good enough, and I knew there was a deal there for me and mine. That why shouldn't I do it? You know, if I don't, I'm going to miss out on a lot of things. I've got some friends around me to form a band if I wanted to go that way. But Ray Glynn, who was with me, brilliant guitarist, made me buy a Martin to play, which is my wonderful guitar. Not got it anymore, but and we did the recording in their studio, the first album, and I just went ahead and say, okay, boys, I'm going to make a solo album, and I'm going to lead the band, and that was that. I did hear afterwards that they've got a new singer, as I said before, Michael Rickford's. And they had a couple of hits, you know, The Baby, I think one was called, and Magic Woman Touch, which, you know, was they got hits. What more can I say? They were in the charts.
Allan, you're being too kind. They were tiny, tiny, tiny hits. Tell me the night the phone rings, who rings you up and says, Allan, please come back?
Which tell me. I mean, Tony said, you know, can I meet you? I need to have something to discuss with you. I think it was about 2.5 or nearly 3 years later, and me another 4 albums later. And we went to a pub, and he just says, will you come back to the band? And I said, well, I didn't want to leave in the first place, and I don't see any reason why I shouldn't. Sure, we'll go ahead and we'll do it. And so I did. And like everything was like, here I was singing all those songs again. So I had a 3-year holiday, to be quite honest. I mean, I didn't have to tour every year and all things like that. It didn't go too well with me on my solo albums. I must put that, you know, there. That, you know, it wasn't as if I was zooming up the charts and everybody was sort of grabbing me, wanting me to go on tour. But I was having a good time. So to go back to the band, you know, was a good thing to do.
I've mentioned you on Midnight Special doing Long Cool Woman, which looks to me like it's around about Air That I Breathe time, after it had been a hit, about 2 or 3 years later. It looks like you went on Midnight Special, 2 or 3 songs, you do that. Have you seen that clip on YouTube?
No, I don't think so. I don't watch myself at all on YouTube. I never look at it. It's a part of my past, you know. Anyway, you know, I'd be there for days. There's just tons of it on different aspects of my life, dressed in some silly clothes and some others, you know, just doing Long Cool Woman 3 different ways or whatever, you know. But it's all there. It's but tell me what you think of it, that I should be looking at it.
Well, it's a great clip, because you're doing it live, and if you look at it, it looks like you did it when there wasn't much of a studio audience there, because the cameraman gets up on stage and starts filming you kind of over your shoulder, and then he, you know, turns the camera and gets one of the other guys on guitar. Then he comes back to you. But it is a great live performance. You look great, you sound fantastic, and yes, you are wearing that lovely North Beach leather. And if there's one clip that I think you should go to YouTube and watch, Allan, with Jenny and maybe the kids and the grandkids, and say, look, this is Dad in action. That is the clip, and I can't believe you haven't watched it. How often, Allan, do you sit at home, you got your mug of cocoa and your slippers or whatever it is, there's nothing on the TV. How often do you think, I was in the studio with Paul McCartney at the piano as he was singing Hello, Goodbye. I've recorded with the Everly Brothers. I've seen Elvis live. I've had number ones. I mean, that would just be all consuming to me. I'd be thinking that every minute of every day if I were you.
Oh, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Well, for me, it doesn't happen like that. You know, I mean, there are times, I mean, I'm never recognized anymore anyway. Not that it bothered me when I, it doesn't bother me now not being recognized. I'm a deeply family. You know, I've got most of my family around me, my grandsons and all their friends, and a lot of other friends that are not in the business. I don't think I have got any friends in the business, not that I can call real friends. You know, I have acquaintances that I can share stories with, and I'll go and have a meal with and things like that. But most of my friends were not in the business arena. I'm more now involved in, Jenny's my wife has been a sculptor for a long time, and I used to do all of her casting in the early days, so that kept me busy when I wasn't on the road. And we have a lot of art friends now. We go around to galleries because she shows in a lot of galleries, and I've rekindled a friendship with an very old friend of mine called George Underwood, who used to be in Bowie's band in the old days. You may have seen him in the news. When we lost David, he was in the news a lot. But we rekindled our friendship from the 60s, and it's like we never parted, you know. So no, my head is not full of what I did in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, or even the 90s. It carries on each day at a time, you know. And sometimes people ring me up and say, "Will you do this show, which is called Guitar Stars and whatever you?" And I thought, well, you know, and it's you. So, of course, I do. So this is the highlight of this day. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's very, very kind of you to say so. Now, out of all the hits, Alan, and I've mentioned the three that I think are the biggies, what is your absolute favourite? If it comes on the radio, is there a Hollies hit you turn up?
Well, first of all, I don't have the radio on in the car because I like to drive silently. But when I'm in the house, many times when I'm outside, people, "Oh, we heard you on the radio the other day," and I have to go, "Oh, yeah, right, okay," because you know we are on the radio a lot. But when it actually comes on, it's not me. It's just a piece of music, you know. I live in a different kind of life now, and to hear the air that I breathe, sometimes it catches me, and I say to myself, "I wish I could still sing like that." You know, but then that thought goes. But you know, there was one occasion when I did the Albert Hall, and I knew that my wife and my mother and father were in the audience right at the front, and I remember coming on and closing the show with "The Air That I Breathe" and "He Ain't Heavy," and that particular time in my life, the best time, sang those songs so well that it stuck in my mind that I would probably never sing them. And yeah, so those two songs, and as long getting into rock and roll with "Long Cool Woman," those are my three favourite songs from the Hollies, and Graham is not one of them.
If he's watching this, that'd kill him.
He'll watch it. He'll laugh. He knows. He knows.
Yeah. Look, Alan, it's been absolutely fantastic. I'm such a fan. Not only were you a great pop star, you're an absolute legend as far as I'm concerned, and you're a really nice, decent guy. And there aren't many people. I can't think of any others who've been as honest as you have about, you said, look, I've got to be honest. There were family situations. That's one of the reasons why I left the group, because I wanted to be with my wife at a time when she needed me. And also I couldn't hit the high notes anymore. I had voice problems, right? Now, that is so honest, and loads of you guys have voice problems. No one else. We all have to pretend that we don't know that sometimes when we see very, very famous people, maybe one of them playing a piano, who can't hit the high notes anymore. Why are more artists not as honest as you?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them. It just got to a point where I felt I was becoming an embarrassment, not to myself, but also to the group. You know, they were thinking that I really wasn't up to it, and they weren't wrong. You know, I must say that they weren't wrong. So there was no point in me going on stage and coming to a point where you'd be miming half the song and singing the rest because you couldn't hit the high notes. So I thought, Al, the days are over doing that. You know, it was unfortunate at the same time that Jenny, my wife, got breast cancer for the second time. So that was the push as well for me to say, that's it. You know, I'm not going to be out on the road where I have to be coming home to someone that's missing me when she really needs me, as well as the children and everything else. So I was quite happy in giving up the life that I'd had and to start a new life, which has been absolutely fabulous for the past 21 years. It's been the best time of my life.
And you're now recording again. And you're recording, so now you just think, I'm just going to sing and hit the notes I can hit. What's wrong with that?
And they're pretty high these days, I tell you. I mean, there's a technique, you know, when you see, when I brought the album Our Resurgence, it was something that was never meant to happen, as I've told you. And it was only like by chance that my friend in America had sent some things over to the CEO of BMG, Abbey, and who rang me and said, I want to release the album, which was a complete surprise and really wasn't ready for it 100%. But I had been in the studio with a friend of mine, Francis Haynes, who used to play piano, brilliant pianist, as you know, in his studio, making what I thought were going to be demos into brilliant demos, which ended up turning out to be an album called Resurgence, and writing all the songs on it, and playing guitars and doing harmonies. And it was a wonderful feeling to have it accepted, not by the whole world, but it did very, very well. And I was quite happy that all the radio shows that I did and the people that I spoke to gave me great credit for doing it and thought it was a wonderful thing to do. And the songs were great and I was singing well. So when it comes around to doing the second time, you have just that little bit more, a little bit more courageous to maybe go a little bit further vocally and songwriting wise. And I thought the last album, to my wife always tells me it's brilliant, which is always good. You know, makes me feel good.
We enjoyed. You know, I played it on BBC Radio. I thought that was a great album, and it was just so nice to have Allan Clarke back in our lives.
Well, it's going to happen again. I can't tell you when because I'm still working on it. But there's some great stuff. I've been putting harmonies on, but you know, wait till the other guy does it.
Well, look, I've really, thank you so much for doing this. I'm such a fan of yours. The Hollies, yes, but particularly you. And this has been a real joy for me. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex. You always make it easy.
Stars, Cars, Guitars was produced by Tom Stroud.